What's up guys, it's Jaden, also known as Project Elements here, and yes, we are finally taking a look at this interesting fellow. Now, for those who have been following me for a long time, and know some of my history on other platforms, you might have seen this guy at least once. If not, well, then this is your introduction to my beloved Jazwares classic Metal Sonic plush. Yeah, this guy is seriously awesome. Like, no questions about it. This guy is definitely one of the best Jazwares Sonic plushes. I mean, okay, it's not that high a bar to reach, but man, he's really good. So, what's all the details about this guy? Well, this guy was released as part of Jazwares' Sonic plush line. Now, specifically, this guy comes from their classic Sonic plush line. So, this is classic Metal Sonic. In that line, there was also classic Sonic, classic Tails, classic Knuckles, and classic Amy, all part of the sort of Sonic through timeline sort of thing that Jazwares did back in the day. And yeah, because that was around the time of Sonic Generations release. I think this guy came out just before Lost World released, so Generations was still, you know, the hot game of the hot Sonic game of that time. So yeah, this guy ended up coming out, and I have to say he's probably one of Jazwares' best plushes, just hands down. And okay, I'm gonna say this right now, and this is not a hot take because I'm pretty sure everyone will agree with me when I say this. Jazwares was not very good at making plushes. Actually, I'm not even just gonna say that, I'm gonna show you why. Now, the real OGs will remember these guys. Yep, my original Jazwares Sonic and Shadow plushes. These things have been around for a long time. If you scroll back in my videos just a little bit, I actually did make my first ever video public, and yes, both of them were in it. And it's as awful as it sounds. Please do not watch it if you don't want to, like, cringe yourself to death. But yeah, these guys, I'm not gonna beat around the bush, they're not that good. Like, you got this Sonic with extremely weird feet proportions, and he's obviously very used and stuff. He had a lot more vibrant of a color back in the day, but even so, like, he's just not a good plush in general. Like, he did survive all this time, but he still looks ugly, and it's not because of the literal poo stains on his eyes. He's just ugly. The same goes for the Shadow. The Shadow went through less than the Sonic and looks... honestly, he just looks weird. I mean, his back at some point somehow got, like, ripped open. That had to be stitched back together. Also, his back spines and stuff ended up splitting at some point, so yeah. But, you know, these two are my originals. They're just not very good as plushes. And you can definitely tell the stark difference between this Metal Sonic and these two plushes. Although, I will admit, these two did come before this guy, so it sort of makes sense why Jazwares' first attempts might not have been the best. Although, yeah, these are seriously just not good plushes. So, how does this plush actually stack up? Well, I'm actually glad you asked, because now I can finally gush about how much I love this guy. Alright, so first off, the face. Now, his little bolts on the sides of his face are using some sort of overlay, which is actually used quite a bit on him. It's used for these things, and also his engines and stuff. And I'm pretty sure it's also used on his shoes. So, a lot of use of the overlay material, similar to something like a GE plush. Although the rest of his face and most of the plush itself is actually very fluffy. I think the only thing that isn't fluffy are the hands, any place with the overlays, and the feet. Otherwise, it's a very soft and fluffy plush, which the other plushes I showed before were not due to years of actual abuse. So it was very refreshing when I first got this guy back in the day, just to have one of these guys in like relatively new shape. Although if you noticed, there's a little bit of his material torn away around the eye. Now, I did buy this guy used. He didn't come with a tag, but he did come with the touch tag, which is in good shape and just gives some general information about the guy. But overall, you know, he's in decent shape. He's not in perfect condition, but you know, for something I literally paid $30 for, that goes for like double if not triple that nowadays, I'd say that is good enough. I mean, that's like good enough, you know? I mean, yeah, I don't even want to think about how much he sells for nowadays. I am just very glad I own him. But yeah, so his face looks really good. His eyes are more of the fluffy material, but with an embroidered, his embroidered red eyes and just embroidery all around the eyes to give them a more segmented look, which I believe, yeah, most Jazwares plushes use that sort of technique. Now, that isn't the only thing about his face, because his ears are also pretty good. I mean, it pretty much just is the ear detail, but with like a little bit of felt stitched on. But I think it still works. It works for him, and it looks decent. Now, flip him over, and this is the one thing a lot of people tend to have a problem with these guys, because his sort of spike, I guess, design, much like many other Metal Sonic plushes, can get, let's just say it can get really bent out of shape. Mine is a little bit bent downwards, but it looks fine. But usually it also doesn't jut out. They tend to just stay in like the back position, much like other Metal Sonic plushes out there. I think actually the Tomy Metal Sonic plushes do it the best, because instead of it being a flat piece, it's actually a plush piece. So it's stuffed and it keeps its shape. Although, because of that, it also is slightly inaccurate, because it is supposed to be flat when it's not. So, you know, you win some, you lose some with that sort of design. But moving down to the body, you can see some more of that overlay material, and it's actually, mine's in pretty good shape. Like, I've seen some of these with the overlay just cracking and just falling apart at the seams. It is painful whenever I see those. And front and back with his booster, same deal with the booster as with the head thing. It's just, it can get bent out of shape or just stitched on weirdly, but otherwise it's pretty decent. But yeah, it uses the overlay there, it uses the overlay here. Now, I do think one of the best Metal Sonic designs for this sort of like middle compartment is definitely the GE Metal Sonic, but that one also doesn't have every detail on there, so once again, trade-offs with Metal Sonic plushes. But yeah, the rest of his body outside of the overlay is fluffy, leading into his sort of shoulder pads and his tiny little arms, which I find so cute. It definitely feels like a classic Metal Sonic plush. It's like everything is like big head, like puffy torso, tiny arms, and big hands and feet. It feels like a little chibi Metal Sonic. So yeah, it definitely sells the classic look. But you got the arms, which are pretty simple. It's just that stitched into this little thing. There is a little bit of like weirdness with the stitching, but I'm not sure if that's like, I don't think that's damage as much as that is just, oh god, focus. I don't know. I think that is just how it was stitched on, or it might just be like a little bit of escaping stitch. I'm not sure, but that's just how it's always been for me. And it's the same on the other side. The hands are made out of a sort of They're made out of that, like, rougher material you find on, like, GE plushes, and then the fingers are just made out of thin pieces of the rest of the material used on the plush, which could get bent out of shape pretty easily, but I think they still sell the look, you know? Moving down to his legs, you get more of the same with the arms. It's just one of these little gray pieces stitched onto another one of the blue pieces. And these do cause his legs to, and arms, his legs and arms to bend a little bit, just like from a default position. But I think it actually sort of works in the plush's favor, because whenever you put him into like one of these kind of poses, whenever like you're playing with him and stuff, it gives the illusion that he's like actually flying around without you having to put your hand on his feet and do that the whole time. Or hell, you don't even need to put your hands on his feet and hold it the whole time. You can like afford to like move it around and it'll still look like he's flying, you know? I think it works for him. It's just a very simple way of doing it, but it works. Now his feet are probably the worst part of the plush. Now, they are quite different from a standard Jazwares plush's feet, but that's because they're simple. Too simple, in fact. You just got the red on top, the circle with one overlay circle on that, on both sides, and this goes for the other shoe too, with the white stripe stitched down it, and then just a red bottom. Which is pretty much just, I guess it's par for the course, but at the same time, it is very lackluster, being a super simple detail on an otherwise very good plush. Although other Metal Sonic plushes also tend to cheap out on the feet, so I don't hold it against this plush entirely. It's just sort of a general Metal Sonic plush problem. So overall, what do I think of this guy? Well, this guy he's just really cool. Like, we don't have that many classic Metal Sonic plushes. We currently have 3. One of them is the old Sonic the Fighters one, which is more than impossible to obtain. And then this one, the Jazwares version. And then the recently released Jack's Pacific version, which looks like a Doritos chip. At least this guy doesn't look like a Doritos chip. But yeah, I think this is probably your best bet if you want a plush of classic Metal Sonic. This guy gets basically every detail you need on classic Metal Sonic in a, I guess nowadays not as affordable, but still relatively affordable price compared to Mr. I Fall Apart at the Seams, and also Mr. I Look Like a Doritos Chip. So really, this is kind of your only option, to an extent. But I still think he's a great plush, and he means a lot to me. This was one of the first few plushes I got when I started to get more into the whole rare plush collecting thing back in the day. Him alongside Sine 2007 Amy did kickstart this collection, and for that, I appreciate them. And yeah, I guess that's really all I had to say. Thank you all so much for watching me just gush about a really cool Metal Sonic plush for around 14 minutes. And this has been Project Elements, signing off. See you later, everybody.